On a Tuesday. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program.
Good afternoon, Jake, and our listeners. Hopefully
Eddie has
you are well.
his hair perfectly matted down, and apparently Monday evening is shower night. Is that right?
I shower every day, Jake.
The hair looks perfectly shiny, and you kind of look like I can't tell if it's Spanky from our gang or one of the kids from the Sandlot with the hair.
Thanks, I guess. I don't know.
But your hair looks, you look, my point being, you look all freshened up and ready, and there's a reason I bring this up. And we have plenty to get to in regards to the NFL and the Colts and the Colts quarterbacking situation. And I don't mean, because I'd like to try to hold myself to a standard today with a proclamation that I'm going to make, a show announcement. But we have other things to also get to today, which includes you are ready, I can tell, for the pregame show for the Indiana Fever tonight in a win or go home game or stay home game, right?
Yes, win or go home. I guess, yeah, win or go home.
They're already home, though. So it's win or stay home, because if you win, you go back to Atlanta for game 3.
That is
right. If you lose, you stay home and your year is over with. But nonetheless, tonight it is a decisive game, potentially decisive if they were to lose, not decisive if they were to win. Critical playoff game. Game number 2 tonight between the Fever and the Atlanta Dream. It is a best of 3, and Atlanta holds a 1-0 lead. So you can do the math from there. We will get into that over the course of today. Matter of fact, Scott Agness is going to join us 2 o'clock hour today. We have Stephen Holder joining us just about an hour from now. We'll go over the latest from the Colts, including the injury report, etc., and kind of slide and transition from putting a tie, if you will, on what happened with Denver and move forward now to Tennessee. And in doing so, I think one of the things that you look for in any team as it progresses and as it grows. You could see this with the Pacers. The Pacers this past season, once they were healthy, and at the beginning of the year, if you remember, it was easy to forget that Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith were both hurt for the better part of the beginning of the season for Indiana, and they dropped a lot of games that you were like, what is going on with the Pacers? I thought they'd be better than this. And then it all came together for them once they were healthy. And once they were healthy and rolling, in the unusual event, if you were to drop a game that you didn't think you were going to lose, I've always felt like then you make up for that, or you feel better about it if you then go and win a game that's a surprise. So if you lose, let's say, a home game to, Washington, and you think, man, that is an inexcusable loss. But then you go and you get a road game win in Oklahoma City, you go, okay, it probably balanced out there, right? And in the NFL, I think that for the Colts, a year ago, for example, you kind of didn't know from one game to the next what their chances were going to be, whether they're going to win or lose. But this year, and it's only 2 games. It's only 2 games, but what they're doing right now, what the Colts have been able to do, is be remarkably efficient. And that efficiency, the most offensive yards for a Colts team through 2 games in almost 25 years. The highest yard per catch average for a tight end on their roster through 2 games since Dallas Clark. 10 possessions to go and get points on the board, and the first in the Super Bowl era to do exactly that. They are playing at a clip offensively that it doesn't blow you away, because a lot of times they're getting field goals and not touchdowns, but they're remarkably efficient and they are taking care of the football. And that has allowed them to win these 2 games. But what is interesting to me, and part of the growth and maturation of a team, is when you can look at a team and say, okay, now there are no games that you go in and say, like against inferior opponents, where you say, okay, that's a 50-50. There are games now that you anticipate them winning. A year ago, I think in any game for the Colts going into it, you thought, I could go either way. Now you have games that you expect them to win. I think people expect them to win in Tennessee. And part of the growth of a team that we will see, I don't know where they are with this, but one of the things you can look for if you're assessing whether or not this franchise or this team is using this season as a spring forward is, in fact, not having let down games. Where if you've won that game, you probably got a little help from the football gods, and you win that game on that field goal after that penalty. Now the question becomes, do you offset that now by going out and coming out flat in a game against an opponent that is probably one of the bottom three in the NFL in Tennessee? If you are a team that is making progress, then you win the games you're supposed to win. And I don't know going into this season how many games on this calendar you would say for the Colts they're supposed to win. But this would be one of them. Now, Eddie, let me ask you, in your opinion, not by looking at the records per se, but just based on expectation, personnel, turmoil, etc., who right now would you say are the four worst teams in the NFL?
Well, unequivocally, the New Orleans Saints are there. I would still put the Carolina Panthers in the bottom quartile. The other two, Tennessee and I can't think of Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago's pretty hapless. I mean, they can't seem to get out of their own way, right? But my point being, Tennessee's definitely there. Miami's very high on the list.
Cleveland.
Cleveland's pretty bad, too, although Cleveland scored a lot of points in week one, right? They at least looked offensively competent. And it's hard to say because they just got blown out, but they were playing Baltimore, who's one of the best teams. But my point being, you ask anybody on the street, you ask fans that question at an Arizona Cardinals game, a Seattle Seahawks game, a New York Jets game, or an Atlanta Falcons game, and you say, who are the worst teams in the NFL? You're going to have some regional bias, some divisional bias, but I think Tennessee would be on most people's bottom four list right now still. Young quarterback, etc. And that is a game that they should get. Now, I have a proclamation to make regarding the Indianapolis Colts. I have an announcement and a declaration and a pledge. Do we happen to have, Eddie, the breaking news sounder? I'm late to this party, and I apologize. And it's only in the sake of being thorough that this was defied. And I know I'm late to the party. But effective today, is today the 15th or 16th?
Today is the 16th.
Effective today on the 16th of September, and the year 2025, through 2 weeks, I am at this point prepared to say that we will not continue talking weekly about Anthony Richardson when discussing a game plan for the Colts. And hear me out on this. That is not to say that I think 2 weeks of Daniel Jones means that what they have here is they have suddenly found themselves a quarterback that got a second lease and is found himself a permanent home. We don't know that. There's still a lot of football to be played. And he could get hurt, don't get me wrong. But between some of the videos that you've seen of them in practice, and more so the way that players are now responding to Daniel Jones and the offensive efficiency and the involvement that he has gotten for a number of different players in different operating areas than we're used to, those are the reasons Shane Steichen tabbed him, and they are clearly not going to go away from that, which then turns into this question of what kind of quarterback is he in the league? And I ask that because I'm watching last night, and I found it interesting that you had 4 quarterbacks last night playing on Monday Night Football. And they kind of fall into different categories. Now, I did not assign Daniel Jones a category here, but I made a list of categories of NFL quarterbacks in 2025, and I want people to tell me, okay? I want people to tell me which group at ceiling you think Daniel Jones is for the Colts. At ceiling. If everything goes perfectly and whatever else. Okay? And there are 5 tiers here. Okay? Really, to be honest with you, 4 tiers and then an incomplete list. But let me explain. Tier number 1. This is the Jake Query opinion, and I realize some of these can be debated. Tier number 1, franchise quarterbacks. These are quarterbacks that right now, based on, and this is all assuming that every player I mention is healthy, but these are the quarterbacks that, regardless of who's around them, they lift people up, they make them better, they are in their prime, they have figured it out, they have nice touch on the balls that need nice touch, they have big throws on plays that have big throws, and when their team is down on the final drive of the game, starting on the 10-yard line, you feel confident that dude is about to go 90 yards and score a touchdown. Okay? In my opinion, and once we're done, Eddie, you can feel free to disagree. Jot down, if you'd like, the ones that you outrageously disagree with, okay?
All righty.
In my opinion, group number 1, the franchise quarterbacks. I have Josh Allen in no particular order here. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, and Justin Herbert. Those are the guys, in my opinion, that I feel very good when the ball's in their hands that they are going to do the right things. Group number 2, these are quarterbacks you win with, but they still need help around them.
Okay.
They don't necessarily automatically lift everybody, but you feel very, very good that if they are healthy, that enough piece is there that you can win with them. Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about – this is where they are right now in 2025. Matthew Stafford, who very clearly used to be in Group 1, right? Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Love – I'm trying to read my handwriting. Baker Mayfield. That's who I have in that group, okay? Group number 3. These are guys that you are in a holding pattern, and you're never going to get out that vat of mediocrity. You're not terrible. You're not great. They're going to go for you 10-7 every year. Tua, Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and Kyler Murray. These are guys that are not terrible. They're not great.
Can you repeat that? I'm writing this down over here for my...
Tier 3,
Okay.
Tua, C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and Kyler Murray. I don't mean this as a slight on any of these guys, but we have enough body of work now to know if they're your starter, more often than not, you're going 11-6. They're fine, but they don't take you to the next level. And group number 4, these are the guys that when you're on a road trip and you're driving and they're in the passenger seat and you're like, hey, man, I got to get my phone in the back seat real quick. Can you grab the wheel? And they're just reaching over and holding the wheel to keep it in the straight lane until you get to the next rest stop and somebody else comes in to drive. These are guys that are simply riding out their career for a franchise that is letting them ride it out because they know that they've got to blow it up and start over, and there's no way they're going to be there in 2 years.
All right, Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, and Spencer Rattler. Then you have the guys that I put down as incomplete. Look like they may be the guy, but you just don't know yet. Drake May, Cam Ward, Michael Penix, Bryce Young, although I think in Bryce Young's case, we might be able to assign him in 3 or 4. Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy. Now.
Who'd you say? May, Penix, Young, Williams, McCarthy?
Correct. And Ward. Having said that, the question is this. If Daniel Jones, with what we've seen through just 2 games, and it's dangerous to go off 2 games, but I found it interesting last night as I'm watching the 4 teams that are playing. And I'm seeing quarterbacks And I'm thinking to myself, Daniel Jones could fall into a couple of these categories. You've got Baker Mayfield, who's a guy that I think, and I like his moxie. When Tampa got the ball back last night, was there any doubt in anybody's mind they were going to go down there and score? And that Baker Mayfield was going to find a way to get it done?
I had a little doubt just because the line couldn't hold up.
And the Houston Texans have a very good defense.
Yeah.
No doubt. They have a very good defense. But I'm just saying, let me rephrase that. Is there any doubt in anybody's mind that Baker Mayfield thought he was going to go down there and score?
Oh, heck no.
You know what I mean? And he is not with the first team that drafted him. He's not even with the second team he played for. But he has found a home, rejuvenated. Kind of one way to find yourself a quarterback. Then you have C.J. Stroud. Young quarterback, out of the womb. Immediately people are like, ball placement specialist. This guy is as cool as the other side of the pillow. How in the world did he not go number 1 overall? Poised, big arm, can run. Really good quarterback. And yet, missed some throws yesterday, looked a little rattled at times. And so you're starting to wonder. Yes, he looks like he's going to be a long-term quarterback in the NFL, but maybe he's not in the upper echelon that we thought. Then you have Geno Smith, who is in one of the games that has kind of been a journeyman. With the right coaching around him, can win you some games. But I don't know that he's the guy that himself is going to be the one lifting you to the win, but rather you can win some games with him. He's not going to hurt you, but I don't know that he necessarily goes out and gets it done for you. And then you have Justin Herbert, who I realize is the kind of sexy, popular pick of, I'm a quarterback's quarterback, so I know. I've watched the Gruden shows, and I know quarterbacks, and he's got all the intangibles. But I do think he does. And I think that the combination of Justin Herbert with Jim Harbaugh, but more so just when he's been healthy. He has been hurt almost the totality of his career in different points. And yet, I think he's got a cannon of an arm. He has nice touch when he needs to. I think he reads the field well. I really like Justin Herbert. And he is a guy that I think he probably is at the bottom of that tier 1 group for me and could be kind of straddling group 1 and 2, trying to push himself permanently into group 1. So he's my biggest stretch there, but I really like him.
I would put him between group 1 and group 2.
Okay.
The only reason
fair.
why I can't put him in the franchise category just yet is because he hasn't won a playoff game.
Understood. Fair. Understood. But to me, he looks like he's got all the tools. And now combined with Jim Harbaugh, I think that's going to be, a dangerous combo for teams in the AFC West. Now, having said all of that, Daniel Jones to you, if he stays on this trajectory, let's say he stays healthy, and let's say that this year continues as it has started off for the Colts. It's an interesting thing to bring up, not because we are, I realize we're only 2 weeks in here, and we got a long way to go. But if they play the way they did for games 1 and 2, and if you look at the rest of the division, then barring injury or collapse, they are going to be, I said 10-7 at the beginning of the year. I think that's still very much in play. I don't think you totally redirect your expectation based on 2 wins, one over against a really bad Miami team and the other one, against Denver in kind of a gift at the end. And we're going to get to Shane Steichen's 3:28 a.m. epiphany that he had. We're going to play for you in just about 10 minutes. But if you look at where they are right now and staying on this trajectory and what you anticipate, I think if you look at their remaining schedule, if they're playing the way they are right now, they beat the Raiders, they beat the Cardinals, they beat the Titans twice, they beat Pittsburgh, they beat Seattle, and let's say they split with Jacksonville and Houston. That puts them at 9. Boom, right there. You're at 11-6 because you're already 2-0. And all of those seem very manageable. So with all of that, you would then put Daniel Jones, Eddie, in what tier?
Probably, I'd say tier 3.
See, bingo. I agree with you. And the problem with tier 3,
And has the, he has the potential to be in tier 2.
he does, but the problem is you still feel like he keeps you in tier 3, which is you're kind of perennial, annually around, I can't say perennially, you're annually around 11-6, 10-7, maybe occasional 12-5. Get into the playoffs. You're a nice, solid, I'm trying to think of a quarterback that would get you to the playoffs, and you're solid like Matt Schaub, right?
That's a good one.
But here's the thing.
I didn't have Matt Schaub on the bingo card for today.
What I think the Colts should look at is that Daniel Jones, and it's so early to say this, we're 2 weeks in, and it is a year of evaluation. But I think Daniel Jones may actually provide to the Colts something that they have not had in quite some time. Matter of fact, I would go so far as to say that in Indianapolis, he may have something, Daniel Jones, and he may be a quarterback for the Colts that this franchise in Indianapolis has never seen. He might break the mold for this franchise in this city because of something that we've never seen before. And it's a good thing. I think he provides a service that is a good thing that we've never in this town seen. And it's a question of whether or not a number of things, whether or not the Colts see what I'm talking about before their eyes. And then if they do, whether or not the Colts who see it that way are going to be the ones deciding futures about each and every player. But it's not a slight on Daniel Jones. He's played 2 games and he's played really, really well. And I am invigorated. I am excited about, I am optimistic about the service that he could provide to them as a continued starter, and it requires you re-signing him. But it's something that they really have never done in this town. I will tell you what that is. And, we often talk about, Eddie, with me, the 3:28 a.m. epiphany, where I'm staring at the ceiling and all of a sudden I get the brain dropping at 3:28 in the morning, and then I come in the next day and I say, guess what? Here's something that happened. I think Shane Steichen might have had that, which is not a bad thing. I think a lot of these guys, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, they talk about how they would go to bed and they'd sit there and they'd replay old games in their head and then go over it. Juan Montoya once told me that when he won the Indy 500 the night before the race, he sat in bed and he went through the entire race in his head trying to figure out exactly lap by lap where he was going to make passes and what he was going to do, and he did 200 laps in his head. I think yesterday Shane Steichen sat there, stared at the ceiling, and had an epiphany because he recaptured something in his mind. We'll let you hear from that, and I'll tell you what service Daniel Jones might provide next. Daniel Jones on what he can be, or what I think he can be in terms of the big asset for the Colts in just a second. But the talk yesterday, Shane Steichen, and the decision at the end of the game to kind of take the ball out of Daniel Jones' hands. You just heard J&V talking there about how Daniel Jones played pretty fearless in that game against the Denver Broncos. But late in the game, the final drive, the Colts know that they need a field goal to win. And they, yes, were moving the ball with Jonathan Taylor well, but also Daniel Jones had been so effective and so efficient over the course of that game, and yet they elect to run 5 of their final 7 carries or touches of the football. And it puts them in a situation where they get stuffed, and now they got to kick a 60-yard field goal, and only the penalty kind of saved them. And Shane Steichen had initially come out after the game and said, yeah, I'm not really going to get into that, when he was asked about the thought process of strategy. And then when pushed on it a little bit, he came out and said, you know what, I will get into that. Not in a, not in a angry way at all. He just decided to elaborate and essentially said, look, I did not want to give Denver any time on the clock. Essentially, if you were
looking back at the end of the game,
he said, he's so excited to talk about it, he's jumping right back in again, right?
That's my fault.
He basically said, I trusted our kicking game better than I trusted our special teams or defense to stop Denver from getting in range of theirs. That's basically what he said. But when he had a time and an evening to think about it, and you do this a lot, George Costanza did it. George Costanza said, he was all about the jerk store. That was going to be his comeback. The jerk store called, and they're running out of you. But he didn't think of it until after the fact. Had to set up another meeting just to get it done, because he thought of it the next day. And the next day, Shane Steichen talked about it, thought about it, and this is what he said about the decision and the play calling of the final drive.
Looking back at the end of the game there, going back through it, obviously getting the first down there with Alec, probably should have been more aggressive there. Got a lot of faith in Spence to make a kick, but don't want to put him in those situations from that deep. We had 3 timeouts. Probably could have thrown the ball on second or third down there in that situation to get it closer to a field goal. So learn from that. Obviously don't want to do that to our guys again. But obviously we had found a way to win there, thankfully.
There was a lot of talk about Carly Ursay-Gordon taking notes of some of the play calls. And I think that's much ado about nothing. I thought an outstanding point was just made right before we were on ESPN Radio, talking about that, about how it's easy for people to point out. Does it make, and is it overstepping? Does it make coaches and general managers nervous when they look over and their owners on the sideline wearing headsets and keeping notes? And they're saying that about Carly Ursay-Gordon standing there, keeping her notes with her headset on, and how weird is that, and why is the owner wearing headsets, and et cetera. Yet, last night, if you watch Monday Night Football, they showed Tom Brady up in the box for the Raiders. He is a part owner, not the sole, admittedly, not the buck stops here guy, but he is a part owner of the Raiders, and he's up there with a headset on, and it's like, man, what a huge advantage for the Raiders. What a benefit for the Raiders. So why, on one hand, is it odd and weird and pressure, and on the other hand, it's an advantage? I think that's a very fair question.
I think there were people complaining about the fact that Brady's, the lead broadcaster for Fox.
I think that's also fair.
That's the issue that the NFL put themselves in, but, I don't get why this is such a big problem. Brady's a part owner of the Raiders. He can do whatever the heck he wants.
But Eddie, I do think that I think the concern of the conflict of interest, before we get to Daniel Jones here, is this. If Tom Brady is a broadcaster for Fox, and he also has ownership of a team, if Tom Brady is broadcasting a game, I watched Tom Brady 2 weeks ago. I had on the Commanders, I think it was Commanders-Giants game. and Brady was the booth analyst.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you look up for me the Raiders' schedule, just out of curiosity?
There is a conundrum that is approaching quickly. I do know this.
What's that?
So Brady's on the call for a Bears game.
Okay.
And then the Raiders play the Bears
Bingo. That's it.
The next week.
So that's it. So when, as a broadcaster,
he's on the call for Bears Cowboys this weekend, and then the Bears play the Raiders next weekend.
If you're a booth analyst, you go in and you meet with the coaches that week, and you go over, okay, so what are you guys thinking? What do you like about, you hear them say it all the time. I mean, Chris Collinsworth or Al Michaels or Mike Tirico, they say all the time. When we met with the coaches yesterday, they were telling us they really liked what they see out of DJ Giddens. This is a guy they really think highly of.
I don't think Brady's allowed to do that.
Understood, but he's still –
I get it, yeah.
I mean, like, I can be not privy to meetings that take place, and then I come in here and I'm in a booth with you for 3 hours during commercial breaks.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? At any rate, it was an interesting observation. And Shane Steichen, though, explaining his thought process at the end of the game. Now, Daniel Jones. When I was talking about quarterbacks and the way you tier them and where we think Daniel Jones slots in and what his long-term would be in Indianapolis. And again, we had franchises, we had franchise quarterbacks, then we had quarterbacks that you can win with, but you may need to put some help around them. Then you had quarterbacks that are keeping it just kind of in a holding pattern where you're drafting in the middle every year. There's nothing wrong with them. They're perfectly sufficient, but they don't necessarily go out and win you games, but they don't lose you games either. Then you have the quarterbacks that are just holding the wheel for the next guy. In this town, you have essentially seen there have been, let's say, 4 quarterbacks that very clearly were the quarterback. We had periods in Indianapolis where you had like 5 quarterbacks at one time. I mean, at one time it was, no, I'm telling you, like it's Mike Pagel, no, it's Gary Hogaboom, no, it's Art Schlichter, no, it's Mark Herman. We'll just wait because they're going to go out and they're going to get Don Mikowski and they're going to get, Browning Nagel. It was just a rotation all the time, and they were trying something different every single week. And then you really, and then it was like, no, they're going to get Steve Walsh and Craig Erickson. And people forget when Jim Harbaugh got here, he wasn't even really thought that he was going to be the guy, but he ascended, and then there you go. He wasn't even really thought that he was going to be the guy, but he ascended, and then there you go. But when Harbaugh left, Harbaugh got hurt. He ends up going to Baltimore, and they end up with the draft pick that becomes Peyton Manning. And then with Peyton Manning, obviously, he took every snap. Yes, I realize that Jim Sorgi was the backup for the better part of Peyton Manning's time here. But you look at, especially early in his career, the backups were basically guys that were there to tutor Peyton Manning, and that was it. Veteran guys who'd been, Mark Rippon, who'd been around a long time, and they're there to, Don Strock, I think, for the first year. And they were there everybody knew they weren't going to see the field. Now, you had Jeff George that they took in 90, but you already had Trudeau on the roster, and there was a little bit of a battle there, and you change coordinators every year and whatever else, and then they end up trading Jeff George. But then you bring in Andrew Luck, and we know the story there. Since then, they kept kicking the can. Daniel Jones is the first quarterback that I can think of, or the first opportunity that I can think of. And I think he's a nice player. And he may be a really good player for them. Perhaps they found it. Perhaps they found Baker Mayfield. Tampa's Baker Mayfield. Perhaps they found Detroit's Jared Goff. And I realize they had Matthew Stafford, so maybe a bad example there. But Goff has become a really good player. He was a good player with the Rams, but he's a really good player for the Lions as well. Sometimes guys just need a change of scenery, and then all of a sudden you see them blossom. So maybe Daniel Jones, maybe this is who he is. Maybe they found something where this is the long-term, this guy is the guy, and a year from now, everybody's going to be sitting around laughing at all of the other franchises that didn't do what the Colts did in offering Daniel Jones a 1-year reclamation project contract that is paying off for them. Maybe that's the case. But I think more likely Daniel Jones is a really solid player that helps you grow young players like Tyler Warren and like A.D. Mitchell and like Alec Pierce, who let's say you give him a second contract. What he may be, look at the quarterbacks that we talked about in the franchise group. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, those names. Josh Allen didn't get handed the keys right away. Yeah, he ended up starting as a rookie, but he was kind of slowly brought along. Lamar Jackson, yes, he started right away, but he also was not a top 10 pick. He was going into a franchise and drafted by a team that already had a pretty good foundation and nucleus around him. The guys that get drafted number 1 overall oftentimes are getting drafted number 1 overall into franchises that are a complete dumpster fire, and that's why they're taking number 1 overall. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. I mean, he went into the worst situation ever. Baker Mayfield while in Cleveland. Just disarray all around him. And you look at some of the pieces that we put down as we don't know. Bryce Young, Caleb Williams. Are they good? I don't know. Or are they just in bad situations? What Daniel Jones may represent in the long run for the Colts is bringing them back to stability, bringing them back to adulthood, developing some of the young offensive pieces, and allowing Chris Ballard or whoever is making that decision a year from now to patiently look through quarterbacks in round 2 or 3 and drafting themselves a guy that they believe they can grow by having that player watch for a while, like a Josh Allen did. I know Allen's a unique case because he was a top 10 pick. But a player, Jordan Love. Jordan Love's a solid quarterback. Jordan Love, they let him grow organically. And I think sometimes there are some players whose talent are so transcendent and so obvious that you want to just throw them to the wolves. But you don't have any foundation around them from the get-go, and they sink immediately. And even the most talented, and I think Trevor Lawrence is as talented coming out of college as anybody I've seen. But he had nothing around him, total disarray, no weapons. It was a disaster. The same for Baker Mayfield when he was in Cleveland. Just disarray all around him, and all of a sudden, Bryce Young. Who does Bryce Young have around him? I mean, it doesn't help that he's not huge, but who does he have around him? So what Daniel Jones allows you to do, at the very least, if you don't think that he's a guy that you're going to have as a starter for the next 3 to 5 years, at the very least, he gives you foundation of stability and maturity to groom pieces and have a situation and a system in place where you can draft a guy, let him watch for a year or two, and then slowly transition over where everyone knows what the game plan is. And when it comes to young franchise quarterbacks getting their footing in this town, we've never seen one with that situation, because they were walking into situations as the number 1 pick where, in the case of Jeff George, you traded your best lineman and your best receiver to get him, and you changed offensive coordinators every year. And then in the case of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, such football savants that it didn't matter how bad the system was around them. You could build pieces based specifically on that quarterback because they automatically elevated people. And I think at the very least, that's what Daniel Jones is. I don't know which of these 5 tiers we put him in at this point just yet. And it's probably never going to be higher than tier 3. But that's not to say that even with that, he can't benefit the Colts. I have a question for Eddie where I need to know whether or not I was right or wrong about something. We'll get to that next, and Stephen Holder joins us in 15. Tyler, give us a call at 239-1070. Tyler got in the car for 15 minutes to get lunch, and Query is still going on to the point that he started before I got in the car. This guy loves to hear himself tell a story. Listen, I'm all game for somebody else coming on and telling a story with me. So give us a call at 239-1070. Eddie chimes in. I bring Eddie into the mix.
Oh, we got to call to see if it's Tyler.
Maybe it's Tyler. Tyler can actually answer the question I was going to ask here. I'd like to know the listener opinion of this, okay? I promise this. I promise that, at least I like to think. Yeah, I'm just a dude that grew up in Indy, right? I grew up on the north side of Indy. I love the history of Indy. I love the sports of Indy. I love the culture of Indy. I love the people of Indy. All of it, right? And I love going out and just meeting people all the time. So Saturday night, I'm at dinner. So Shannon and I go to dinner, and here's a weird thing about, I don't know why this is, but it's one of the things that we most enjoy. When we go to dinner, we always go and sit at the bar. So, like in a restaurant, if you go to a restaurant and there's a bar in it, we sit at the bar itself and eat and watch games, whatever. And that's what we did Saturday night. So we're sitting there, and this guy next to me, as I'm sitting there eating, and you know, Shannon and I are talking about the IU game or the Purdue game or whatever. And the guy to my left says, "Hey, Jake, you think the Colts are going to be good?" And I look over and I said, "Oh, hey, man, how you doing?" And I said, I actually do. I said on the air that I think they'll be 10-7. And I think, you know, I don't know how good Miami is, but I think they'll win tomorrow, meaning Sunday against Denver. And I said, yeah, I think they'll be decent. And he goes, okay. And he says, and then he asked me a follow-up question. Well, what about who do you like this week in terms of over-unders? And I'm like, well, you know, I mean, you know, so I answer that. And he asked me a third question. And then he says, but let me stop you right here. And I go, okay. And he said, I've never once listened to you on the radio. I've never listened to your show. I don't pay any attention to it. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. And I said, well, then if you don't mind me asking, like, because sometimes when people will say something to me, I wonder, because I grew up here. My immediate default is this is someone I grew up with, went to high school with, played Little League with, whatever, right? And so I'm like, okay. And I said, so I don't mean to be rude. So we have met before? No, I've never met you. And I said, okay. So I'm just curious, how did you recognize me? Well, you've just been around forever, but I've never listened to your radio show. I've never once turned it on. I go, okay. So then I answer a couple more questions. We go back to eating, whatever. Then he says, by the way, let me, and he's by himself. He reaches in. Now he's handing me his business cards for his real estate business and his golf company that he has, and wants to know if I wouldn't have any interest in maybe passing those out or letting people know about them. Now,
no, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Here's the thing. I totally appreciate it, and I love talking to people when I'm out and about. That sounds the wrong way. I mean, I enjoy talking sports with people. It's what I do for a living. I enjoy the platform that this job allows us. And it's an open conversation. It's not, I mean, yes, when people are like, you talk too much on the radio. Yeah, I know. I'm the only one here. I mean, Eddie, obviously, the two of us were the only ones here,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, you're the only one here.
So, well, but you know what I mean.
You know what I mean.
And so, but tell me if I'm wrong here, Eddie. While I appreciated and enjoyed talking to him, I thought it was odd that you would begin the conversation under the baseline of saying that you intentionally avoid the product it is that I sell, and then later ask me to help get the word out about the product you sell. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
I'd like people to tell me and I didn't say anything. I mean, I did not say a word about it, but I just was kind of like, that just seems like I thought it was rude.
Very rude. Yeah.
Liz called in real quick. I know we got to get to hold her, but Liz, how are you?
I'm fine. How
Have
are
you, have you
Jim?
called the show before, Liz?
No, I haven't.
Oh.
I've listened for a long time.
What's that?
I have listened for a long time.
Eddie, if you could please, Eddie, do you have the breaking news sounder by chance? Bear with us just a second, Liz. 27 female callers now, Eddie.
No, 28.
27. Is that 28?
Yeah, 28.
28 female listeners. Okay. Liz, I appreciate your calling in and listening to the program. What's on your mind
I
today?
could probably be your oldest female caller.
What's that?
I could probably be your oldest female.
Liz, I got news for you. We have other people that are 39 years old.
Well, I'm 88.
Are you really?
Yeah,
When's your birthday, Liz?
February 16th.
February 16th. Okay, so if you're 88 years old, I'm guessing that puts you somewhere around the high school class of 1954. Is that right?
Exactly.
And what high school did you attend, Liz?
Back in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
The
So,
Sacred
54 was the year of the Milan Miracle here that Hoosiers was based on. And what other than I-70, what brought you to Indiana from New Jersey?
Well, it was, and there was a short stop, unfortunately, in Ohio for a while, but it's called marriage.
Okay, I was okay. Fair enough. All right, Liz, how can we help you in terms of? I believe you had a comment about Carly Ursay Gordon.
That woman has been on the sideline for years. What's with these idiot men screaming and yelling about her being micromanaging and all that stuff? Have they not noticed her down there before?
Well,
I've had season tickets for 30 years.
No, Liz. Here's the difference, though, and you're not wrong, and I don't have a problem with her doing it. So please don't think that this means that I'm saying she's doing it. But the difference is she now, for the first time, is the one that has total authority and is the final say. Whereas before, she was not.
We don't know that, do we?
Well,
just a question, Jake. Just a question.
No. Yes, I do believe. Look, regardless, I guess it's the same way as this. In any line, in any line of work. I mean, I don't want to make this sound like a political thing. In any company, government, whatever it may be, you have the top, right? By definition, the sole independent owner of a business, and then you have the auxiliary owners or your board of governors, that kind of thing. And so long as Jim Irsay was both alive and visible, he was the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. He was the owner and CEO of the Indianapolis Colts. And so therefore, while everyone was aware of his daughters and their learning of the family business and their involvement with the family business, the at least perception was the fact that so long as Jim Irsay, who was a very visible owner, he was the one that was speaking up in owners' meetings, he was the one that was facilitating the ouster of Daniel Snyder, he was the one that was doing things. He was the face of the Indianapolis Colts. And so therefore, because now he is no longer there, rest his soul, that then shifts that face of the franchise to his daughter. And so that changes the perceptions of, and the microscope, especially externally, on the way in which she's on the sideline. I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I'm just saying that is the reason for the difference in the way that it is ingested.
Okay, so what happens at the next? What do you think? Just tell me your thoughts on what do you think it's going to be like at the next owners meeting with all those other clowns and in walk the girls?
I don't think it'll be any different than the last one because in terms of the owners' meetings, this would be the second one that she has represented, at least at minimum the second that she's represented. And she's not the first, and I appreciate the call, Liz, we're up against it. She's not the first female owner, though, because, I was in St. Louis when Georgia Frontier owned the Rams and they won the Super Bowl, and she was a beloved figure, but partially because, she had been in Los Angeles and everything else. But so it's not unprecedented in terms of female ownership.
Detroit used to have a female owner as well.
Yeah, that's right. So, but her age, I think her age probably intimidates other owners more so than her gender, truth be told, just because she's young. And you always have, when it's a family dynamic, you get that element of it. But I appreciate the call, Liz. Stephen Holder next. Thank you to Liz, by the way, for calling in the program. And in February, I look forward to celebrating Liz's birthday, her 49th birthday. Stephen Holder is with ESPN.com, joins us now on the program on the always busy and shockingly unsponsored guest line. Stephen, I'll begin with this. Monday is always kind of the day when the dust settles on a game and you kind of get a chance to look back and get just a better understanding of how things fell, so to speak, and what went right, what went wrong, etc. Do you believe that Shane Steichen, other than giving more clarity and kind of admitting to overthinking that final drive offensively, what areas do you think the Colts look back on and said, even though we won, here are the areas that are of concern?
Well, for me, it's the red zone. I think that late game situation could have been avoided had they converted when they had an opportunity. I mean, 3 opportunities, I believe, down in the red zone. At least once inside the 10, and I think maybe twice. I don't remember the exact field position, but they were in scoring position all day long. I mean, that's what they do now, right? I mean, they move the ball, they get down scoring position, and they get points. But you got to get touchdowns when your defense is giving up points on the other side. So that would be my nitpick outside of the late game situation, which is more than a nitpick. That is a full-blown, what the hell are you doing? But outside of that, my nitpick would be the red zone. And those, see, that's how games work a lot of times, right? These situations unfold early in the game, and you don't always know whether they're going to factor into the result. I would say they did, because frankly, as I said, it had the Colts converted on a couple of those or even one more, it would have been maybe a different situation in that game.
Stephen, were you here when I think it was the first trip abroad, and I'm pretty sure you were here covering the Colts, when the Colts played in London against Jacksonville a number of years ago?
Yep.
Okay.
I went to that game. That's right. Yep.
I believe that game was the low point and final point.
And what's interesting is that Darius Butler was doing the Colts game on Sunday for I believe ESPN Radio, and happened to be there. And I said, wait, do you remember that game? And he was like, yeah, I was the guy who was hurt. I was like, wait a minute, that's amazing. So if I remember correctly, Vontae Davis, may he rest in peace, was injured, and then Darius was one of the backups. Darius came in, and then he hurt his hamstring and missed that game as well. So they had signed Antonio Cromartie off the street, I don't know, a week or two earlier, and it turned out they needed him that game. So yeah, he had, I think, the worst single series I've ever seen a cornerback have, and this was close. Now we'll see. I mean, I think the interesting thing about Xavier Howard is that I wouldn't say that I had any issue with his play in week 1. What he did was perfectly fine, but he also wasn't tested in week 1, which honestly, it raises questions about the Dolphins. Why didn't you test him would be my question. But as Lou Anarumo just finished telling us in his weekly interview, he said, look, when Charvarius Ward is out and, he has to play more snaps, talking about Howard, when he had to be pressed into a bigger role, they thought he would get tested, and they were right. And so, they think that he will play his way into better shape and get his legs back, and that this may be an ongoing process. But he's going to have to play some, even if you bring other guys into the fold here in the coming weeks.
Stephen Holder's our guest. When Lou Anarumo was talking about, just defensively and what they have done through 2 games, and let's get to that before we get over to the offensive side of things. Clearly people enjoy, or they have found success in kind of the more aggressive defense than what we saw from a year ago. They do a little bit more masking. However, it's hard to say because he has not been given his full slate just due to the injuries in the defensive backfield. How will this defense continue to evolve? And do you think that there are even some schemes that Anarumo has not gotten into because of the fact that he has not had his full arsenal?
Well, I think you got to go back to week one. So I thought in week one, you saw him do some more creative things. I did not see as much of that in week two, and that tracks, right? Because of what you just said. They had to maybe be a little more plain Jane, if you will, because, they didn't have their full complement of personnel. And Latu is the big one there as well, not just Ward. It's also Latu to have that consistent pass rush up front. You notice that the pass rush on Sunday was not nearly consistent enough. Granted, Bo Nix is throwing the ball quickly most of the time, but so is Tua Tagovailoa is trying to do that as well, and they got a lot of pressure in week one. So I just think the personnel is a factor, and when you get everybody back, I presume you might be able to try some more tactics that will maybe surprise the quarterback. This will be an interesting game coming up. You got a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. They're not taking him lightly, but as Anarumo said, look, we're going to try to show him some things he hasn't seen so far, which is probably a lot, right, for a young quarterback. So I think this is a game where maybe they do try some different things. We'll see. I don't know the status on Ward just yet, but he is tracking in the right direction from what Shane Steichen has said. So maybe that's promising and they get him back.
I talked about this yesterday, Stephen. I want your thoughts on it. Do you believe that Shane Steichen is calling plays because he believes in the skill set of Daniel Jones and therefore is exceeding what we thought or what maybe he even thought in terms of what Daniel Jones could do? Or is Shane Steichen calling plays in a way that he believes that Daniel Jones has some limitation, and therefore he is creative calling it to circumvent those limitations and try to bring things out of him? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. I think that I think the answer is neither. I think it's a blend. And what I mean by that is I think what you have is a good combination here. You have a coach who understands his quarterback, and you have a quarterback who understands what his coach is trying to accomplish, and they're working hand in hand here. I do think this is becoming a really good duo, and I wasn't sure, how much that would matter, but I do think I understand something now a little better than I did earlier, I think, and maybe this is true for all of us. Back during the quarterback battle, there were times when it was like, look, it's not always obvious, at least in training camp, it wasn't always obvious with Daniel Jones, but I think the mental aspect that he talked about and the mastery of the offense and situations, I think you're starting to see that sort of play out and sort of become a factor and be a reason for Daniel Jones' success. And what I mean by that is Shane Steichen right now is dialing things up where he's going to get somebody open right off the bat. The first option is open very often so far. And Daniel Jones loves to go to his first option, his first read in the progression. And it's been open, and so that is a credit to Shane Steichen, getting the route combinations together in such a way that the first option is available to Daniel Jones. And then there's Daniel Jones' decisiveness, which Shane Steichen is certainly aware of. And that's how you sort of have this blend where the coach is putting the quarterback in the position to succeed, and that quarterback is very good at what they're asking him to do. So neither one works without the other, and it is working right now because they're both doing what they're supposed to do. So I like this combination. Look, Shane Steichen, I think you're starting to see the real high level acumen, I think, of Shane Steichen at times right now. The late game management, that's a different topic. But in terms of the play calling, I think you're starting to see it.
The play calling for Alec Pierce to me is interesting because they started using him more, obviously, in that, intermediate range, or even not necessarily bubble screens, but just in those crossing patterns. Are they setting up with Alec Pierce? We know Alec Pierce is a deep ball threat. Are the Colts setting it up now, Stephen, where all of a sudden Alec Pierce is going to become a dual threat receiver where they're going to come in with plays where he does a slight hitch and then a go route based off of getting used to seeing him coming across the middle?
Well, one of the things that has been an issue with their offense in the past, and they, I think in the self-scouting, they realized this over the offseason. One of the things that I think has been too limiting is that everybody has been a little predictable in their roles. I'm talking about the wide receivers, right? We know what Josh Downs is going to do. Generally speaking, right? Not saying every single time, but you can kind of predict the kinds of routes each guy's going to run. And for Alec Pierce, it was, all right, you're the guy who's going to clear it out with the deep routes most of the time, or at least intermediate. And they brought that to they sort of made that a priority this offseason to kind of figure out a way to address that. And so this was a very conscious thing. I heard about it this past offseason, and I think you're starting to see it. Pierce, getting him involved in the way that they have is not going to hurt him at all. It can only help. As you said, if you now have to worry about him maybe breaking that route inside as opposed to taking it down the sideline, you're going to cover him differently. And maybe it is an out and up, right? And maybe he's not going to break that route off. So listen, you're making it tougher when you are less predictable for the defense. And I think it's all good. I would also say the Tyler Warren effect is just spectacular because I'm just putting a story together now. Like, how are they doing this? What's happening offensively? And one of the reasons is the diversity of their weapons, which is kind of what you're getting at here. And with Tyler Warren, he's the best one in terms of the diversity because he hurts the defense at all three levels. So that's what you got to do. You got to be unpredictable, and they have to not know what's coming, and that's true right now.
Stephen, we're going to do one of my Jake Query hypotheticals here, okay? I would like for you, Stephen Holder.
For you.
What's that?
That's very, very unlike you, but go ahead. Yeah.
Speaking of predictable. Okay, so Roger Goodell calls you on the phone. He says, Stephen, you've been a good guy for us. You've covered the league. You've worked. You've covered owners' meetings. You've been around. So we are going to award you an NFL franchise. So you get to pick, Stephen Holder, a city in the United States that does not have, we've done this before I realize, that has never had an NFL franchise and only has a maximum of 2 other pro sports franchises in town. You, Stephen Holder, decide that your franchise is going to be playing where? What city?
This is tricky. Let's see. A maximum of 2 other pro franchises, you said.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, that makes it tough. I'm thinking, I don't know. I was going to say Orlando, but Florida sucks in terms of sports markets, so we're not doing that. No, I'm a Floridian.
Austin, Texas?
I was going to say Austin. I was actually thinking Austin.
Okay.
I was thinking that. But I was thinking, though, so, I mean, that gives them what? Would that be their 3rd football team in the state, I guess?
In the state, but not in the city.
It's big enough.
The Austin Toros are going to be the Stephen Holder-owned team. Now, here's the thing.
Okay.
Now, the league is going to assign for you a general manager, a team president, and a head coach, so a holy trinity of 3 decision makers. And you, because you were awarded the franchise, you have nothing to do with this. They're going to build the roster. They're going to do everything. You have no say in that whatsoever. But they do an expansion draft. We're not even doing an
expansion draft?
Well, okay, so they have an expansion draft.
I can't draft all the scrubs?
Here's the deal. So they do the expansion draft, okay?
Okay.
In the expansion draft, the guys that have been selected in this fictional team get to pick 1 offensive player off every roster in the NFL. Who do you believe, if all had to be left unprotected, who do you believe is the offensive player of the Indianapolis Colts that would be the first selected?
Wow.
There's a reason I asked this.
This is tough. So this is maybe not the trendy answer because of the position. But I'm sorry,
specialty players. Specialty players, not linemen. Sorry, specialty players.
No, I know. Yeah. but I still think Jonathan Taylor is where this offense begins and ends.
Okay. See, I will. The reason I say it, I will respectfully disagree. I think it's Tyler Warren. And I think the reason it's Tyler Warren is because
that was going to be my second choice.
I think Tyler Warren, and I know we're only 2 games in, but you tell me if I'm wrong. I think Tyler Warren has the more versatile skill set that is the least replicated amongst his peers in a smaller group of people.
Now that's actually, I do agree with that. Look, I was just putting something together here. He leads the NFL. He leads all tight ends in receiving yards, 155 receiving yards. And I think the versatility that I was just talking about, I mean, you think about it. I mean, you can put this guy in the backfield. The screens that they can run with him, you can throw him deep routes.
I know.
Which they just did. I think, I'm just telling you, he is more than I expected him to be.
I mean,
and I expected a hell of a lot.
Listen,
okay?
When you have Bernard Ryman and Quentin Nelson, who are very good players, right? When you have guys like that, then you have them there because that reduces the chances of the pocket collapsing. Tyler Warren reduces the chances of the pocket collapsing only because so long as he's floating around within 8 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, you can just get the ball out there before the pocket collapses, and he is going to make a play on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's their toughest matchup right now. Defenses don't really have a great plan when it comes to dealing with him. I mean, he went up against Patrick Surtain the other day and made a tight catch against tight coverage from Patrick Surtain, the defensive player of the year. But great throw, by the way, by Daniel Jones, who I don't know what has happened to this guy, by the way, not to get off the subject, but like he's throwing the ball into windows where I would never expect Daniel Jones to throw.
I'll tell you what's happened to him, Steven. I'll tell you what's happened to him, okay? You're going to laugh when I say this.
Yeah.
I've thought about this. Here's what's happened to him. The New York Jets, okay? The New York Jets. Who's the best quarterback in New York Jet history of the last 50 years?
Oh, Namath.
Okay. Since Joe Namath, how many, Richard Todd? Like, how many quarterbacks get drafted by the Jets to die, right? That we know. It is the New York Giants, the New York Football Giants, Eli Manning, who grew up around and understood football pressure from the time he came out of the womb. He saw his dad run for his life. He saw his brother playing, etc. Eli Manning was groomed to be an NFL quarterback. Outside of that,
sure,
Phil Simms was a hell of a player, no question about it, right? But Phil Simms also had a coach that was the type that took all the pressure and deflected it off his team. Parcells was in that night mold, right, of like, it stops with me. I'm the guy. That market, you can't adequately judge what a quarterback is able to do in his initial years in the NFL if he is getting his start with the Giants or the Jets, because outside of maybe 3 examples I gave, and those were all unique situations, you can't adequately judge it. I'm not saying that this means that Daniel Jones is going to come here and suddenly become Joe Montana, but I just think that we are starting to see that it was an unfair judgment on who he was based on the dumpster fire that he was playing for and all that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say along those lines, I think I see a more confident player right now.
Totally.
Right? I mean, you can see it, like, even from week 1 to 2, I saw even more. I mean, he was better in week 2 than week 1. And you talk about dumpster fires. He was playing a dumpster fire of a team in week 1 in Miami and playing a real NFL defense in week 2, and he was better. All right? There's a guy, this is a guy who is playing with confidence. That's why he's standing in there tall in that pocket and not cowering from that pass rush. He was really affected by the pass rush in New York, and he was pressured on Sunday. Week 1, he really didn't get any pressure. This week, which is why I was sort of skeptical. I'm like, all right, well, yeah, anybody can do that when you never get touched. But this week there was some pressure. I mean, they protected him pretty well, but they came after him, and there was pressure. He was blitzed. By the way, he was blitzed at the highest rate in a single game in his career. Okay, do you hear me? In his career. And he had a fantastic game for a guy who never reacted well to pressure. This is a confident player right now. He is completely unbothered, and something has changed within his psyche. I don't want to get all psychoanalytical here, but I'm telling you, that's what it feels like. I can't read his mind, but it feels like something has changed mentally for Daniel Jones.
Okay.
He's just playing with a different air of confidence.
Which leads to this in conclusion, Stephen. As Daniel Jones continues to grow, and it's 2 games. I have to keep reminding him, it's 2 games, right?
For sure.
And do I believe that Daniel Jones is now all of a sudden, this means he's going to be a 12-year player for the Indianapolis Colts? And I don't know that. But if, in fact, he has a firm grip on the competency and the continued growth at the quarterback position, and assuming he stays healthy, in a league right now where we already see Joe Burrow out, right? J.J. McCarthy, questionable. Jaden Daniels, going to miss a little bit of time. Justin Fields going to miss a little bit of time. And it's only going to increase as quarterbacks continue to not be available in the National Football League week to week. And I know that they've said they're not going to do it. Does this increase any trade value for Anthony Richardson for teams midway through the year, especially if it's very clear that, barring injury, he doesn't get snaps in Indy?
It does. The only caveat I would mention is this. I think with those situations, for one thing, yeah, it's week 2 and we're already talking about rampant quarterback injuries. So every quarterback with who's intriguing, their value is going up, I think, by the day. So he would be among them. The only issue with Anthony is this. I think he's more of a longer-term project. He's not a guy you're coming in on the white horse to save the day. I think that's the veteran quarterback the Joe Flacco of 2023, for example, right, with Cleveland. You're looking for that kind of guy oftentimes if you need a guy for 3 or 4 weeks, and not Anthony Richardson, who you're going to have to get up to speed, and he's going to have to learn your offense. Maybe that's not the best situation for him. So I think that undermines his trade value a little bit in that scenario, if that makes sense. But generally speaking, yes, all these quarterbacks who are out there, their value's going up. And I would say this to close. There might be a scenario where you just say to yourself, you know what, look, we don't need him to run the full playbook. Let's bring him in and let's just figure something out. And he's a good enough athlete that we can make it work for a few weeks. I don't know. There might be somebody out there who's crazy enough to say that and try it. And I'd like to see it. I'm here for it if it happens.
Stephen Holder, ESPN.com. Your upcoming story will involve what, Stephen?
Well, 2 things. Check out today's piece on the tush push. And there's all sorts of issues surrounding that, and why no one else can figure out how to run the damn thing. And then we're also running through ticking down all the reasons this Colts offense is playing at a historic level right now, which I never thought I'd be saying in 2025.
It is pretty crazy, but a number of ways in which they are doing it. Tyler Warren doing things at the tight end position they have not seen in some time. Their offensive efficiency, their points, all of it. Right now, exactly where Shane Steichen could have only hoped. Stephen Holder, ESPN.com, joining us. Stephen, appreciate it as always, man. Go Austin Toros.
All right, let's go.
All right, Stephen Holder on the program. We come back. We talked about some of those injuries and what NFL injuries are those that are the hardest to overcome, and where may Tyrese Halliburton be in his rehabilitation? A guy that knows that has organized the medical aspect of 35 different events in this country, including World Basketball Championships, talking about swimming championships, USA Track and Field, Final Fours, etc. Ralph Reiff joins us next. top, and I was stunned to hear the age of the individual, not because I'm not saying that in regards to, being old, but to me, frozen in time at the age of 65, I guess. I was surprised to hear that he was 89 years old, but Robert Redford passing away. Legendary actor. He's one of those that I guess a true testament to his career would be that there are just a number of different films or roles of which you could say you immediately recognized him. I mean, All the President's Men would be one of them. He was a Golden Globe winner. He was, I believe, an Oscar winner as well. Alfred Hitchcock Presents is where he got his start. I think of him actually from Barefoot in the Park, odd as that may be. A ton of different roles that he had done. But Robert Redford passing away, that news coming out today at the age of 89. Joining us now on the program, we have talked to him before. He is, without question, the gold standard when it comes to athletic training, the knowledge thereof in all forms of athletics. As I mentioned, he has overseen the athletic training or the medical staffs in planning for 35, if not more, different major sporting events that have come through Indianapolis. Ralph Reiff joining us from Reiff Executive Performance Solutions. And I wanted to talk to you, Ralph, about a number of different injuries, just because this is the time of year where you start hearing them, and sometimes you start hearing about injuries that people are not as familiar with. I'm going to get to Tyrese Halliburton as well, but I want to begin with this one. Joe Burrow is now going to be out a month with turf toe. And I remember Marshall Faulk had turf toe at some point when he was here. And I always just assumed turf toe is like when you get up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water and you stub your toe on the footrest that you didn't realize was there. But what exactly is turf toe?
Yeah, well, it's great to be with you, Jake. And that middle of the night stubbing the toe is where you're basically jamming bone surface against bone surface. So it's sort of a straight line impact. Turf toe, you get into multiple angles. So in this particular case, quarterback Joe Burrows was sort of crunched to the ground. His foot and ankle got squeezed up, and he got a hyper extension of his big toe. So if you imagine going down and grabbing your big toe and just pulling it up as far as you possibly can, and so he had a significant injury to the plate or the bottom of that big toe, and it's quite debilitating. And a lot of soft tissue injury. He ended up going up to Wisconsin to see Dr. Robert Anderson, a very, very good foot and ankle specialist for that particular surgery.
Okay, and that surgery, would it just be I'm going to sound like an idiot here, Ralph. Now, first off, I will tell you, the thought of bending my big toe backwards as far as it can go, I winced along with everybody else when I heard that. And by the way, speaking of wince, he's also going to get playing time, another injury, J.J. McCarthy of Minnesota. But is it a matter of basically just putting the toe back in place and then holding it there so everything around it can heal, because the toe is an area that obviously is under constant movement?
Well, for that, all great questions, Jake. And the issue would be that upon further diagnosis, clear diagnosis of the structure with all the various imaging opportunities that are available, plus the just the intuitive expertise of the physician, there's a number of small pieces to that big toe that are absolutely critical to function. So if it was, if the matter of maybe the tendon, that if you were to grab your, sort of push your toes into the ground right now, all that force comes from tendons along the bottom of the foot that go up the back of the leg and so forth. And so he's obviously damaged that to some degree. And so the other element there are really two small bones. Think of them as small BBs or pearls called the sesamoid bones. And those sesamoid bones are embedded within tendons, and they can actually get cracked, can lose their formation or their place. And those are so critical to the biomechanics and function of the toe that if those were damaged, those needed to be placed back in their original location and embedded there through a surgical procedure. And so the sesamoid bones, think of it a little bit like with IndyCar. It'd almost be like your front end, I think, push rods or the rocker arm that absorbs force that's going vertical, and you want to go horizontal, and the sesamoid bones sort of form that same function. You don't know they're there until they're injured. And so that's my bet, is those sesamoid bones got displaced and surgically needed to be put back into place, and probably the flexor tendon that caused you to curl your toes up probably needed a little bit of repair as well.
You know what, Ralph? I could talk to you for 6 hours about this for two reasons. Number one, I find it fascinating. Number two, you have a unique ability to speak it into a language that somewhat of my lack of intellect can grasp, right? And number three, and I think this is probably the most important thing in like medical training, you just have like this calming delivery about it, right? Where like it's enjoyable to listen to. So I find it fascinating. So I'm going to ask an additional question I had not planned, and that's this, because I think it's important. People that are listening right now and we'll get back into some of these NFL injuries, Ralph Reiff, in a second, but for people that are weekend warriors, people that are, let's say, 35 to 50, 55 years old that are going out to stay in shape and they're running the Monon, or they're maybe going to the gym and lifting some light weights, what's the most common injury that people feel a symptom for and overlook that is actually something that they do need to look into? And what's the most common one that people freak out and think is debilitating, but really it's fairly innocuous and not something of concern?
Well, Jake, that's a 6-hour question. And but many years ago, when I was at Ascension St. Vincent Sports Performance, we saw a number of weekend warriors, as well as elite athletes, and we did some reverse engineering. And why were people coming in with various primarily lower extremity injuries? My front of my knee hurts, pain under my kneecap, the bottom of my foot, plantar fasciitis, those kinds of things. And when we did the reverse engineering on that, we found out that it wasn't so much running on the flat surface of the Monon. It was when a limb might fall down north of the river in Broad Ripple and fall across the Monon, and you had to jump over it. And it was that motion that was unnatural, that jumping mechanism put an additional strain on your body that's in this methodical, locomotive kind of motion that caused that injury. And it's that thing you feel, whether it's a sharp pain or it's a dull ache or it feels a little bit fat and swollen, but you really can't see it when you get home or the next day. That's something you ought to have looked at, because you might be dealing with a tear of a meniscus in the knee that you just didn't think it couldn't have happened. But those are the kinds of things that really create issues. And we could go on and on. There's you pick a joint or a soft tissue in the body, and we could talk a long time about it.
Well, so to get to the point of, all of a sudden feeling like kind of that quick burn or that little pop where you just think like, whoa, in the case of Tyrese Halliburton with an Achilles, it's obvious and it's debilitating. You could see that. Everybody saw that in that game. We talked to you then in regards to Tyrese Halliburton's recovery. I want to be clear, Ralph Reiff, for your protection, I guess, you are not individually, to my knowledge, working with Tyrese Halliburton, but speaking in generality about a recovery from that sort of an injury. If that took place some now 3 months ago for Tyrese Halliburton, and he is now out of the boot, that would appear to be on schedule, ahead of schedule. Is there any way to kind of analyze from afar what that means?
Yeah, certainly. And yes, I have no affiliation with Tyrese Halliburton's recovery, healthcare, et cetera. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Just to put that in perspective, what you said, his surgery was actually 3 months ago today.
Okay.
The 16th of June. And so what's that, 92 days, if I counted right. His surgery was the following Monday at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City on Monday the 23rd. So he's 82 days out from that repair of the Achilles, and we don't know what else was done or the exact type of procedure. There's different ways of making spaghetti sauce, right? And so there's different ways of repairing the Achilles tendon as well. But he went to the Hospital for Special Surgery for a reason. The person there is really good, and they've done a lot of high-level athletes who have made return to sport. And so he is on schedule. That's my opinion. I saw some social media stuff. I've seen him at fever games, walking around. And he is on schedule, is my sense. And I did notice on social media that he's wearing a strap around his knee, and folks may have seen that too. That's a Firefly strap that continuously puts this gentle pulse of electricity into the peroneal nerve, which is on the side of the leg, and it simulates blood flow throughout the whole lower leg and into the Achilles tendon area. So one of the big things that can reduce a good repair, reduce the optimal outcome, is the amount of blood flow that you get into the areas sort of to bathe that surgical repair. You want to bathe it in good, rich blood. And without activity, you can't do that. So being in the boot is necessary, but to have this continuous stimulation through this Firefly strap is an excellent way to get that done. He can use that on an airplane, riding in a car, sitting in a chair. He can use it all the time. So he's got this continual activity that is assisting his body with repair. By all indications, he's on schedule.
Ralph Reiff is our guest. Again, Reiff Executive Performance Solutions. And, of course, RalphReiff.com. That's REIFF, RalphReiff.com, where you can read more about his work, also his speaking and the work that he's done in terms of training. Ralph, one last one for you here. We hear a lot about this with NFL quarterbacks right now, and that is concussion protocol. You know, we're all familiar with the fact that a player shows symptom of a concussion, they go into the protocol. Is there any sort of a baseline when it comes to concussions of, you know, is that the hardest one, I guess, to put a blanket statement on, because does it seem to have the widest spectrum between the severe and the not as severe, but all having to kind of be treated the same? Because when you're talking about neurologically, you have to be very careful, more so perhaps than other areas.
Well, severity of a concussion should not come into the initial diagnosis. A concussed brain, a brain that moves from side to side within the skull, and it sort of washes back and forth on a microscopic level. That's what creates the bruising or the concussion to the brain tissue when it hits the wall of the skull. And so to determine the severity is really not done at the time of the injury, whether someone's knocked out or whether they just walk off the field and all of a sudden they ask their teammate a really unusual question, okay? Or the spotter upstairs notices an imbalance in posture, and so they red flag the person. The severity of a concussion really comes down the road, and it really is how long does that concussed brain take to heal? How long does it take to recover to normal function? So severity, unfortunately, is hard to manage. It's hard to say whether they're going to be out 5 days, 10 days, any multiple of that. And so the baseline is done. There's a number of different ways that NFL teams, collegiate teams, high school teams, all sports around the world baseline brain activity. And there's a impact testing, which was invented in the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center out in Pittsburgh, obviously. UPMC has the impact test. There's a sway balance test. There's a SCAT-6 score. These are all things that we in healthcare baseline, and if there's moms and dads listening, or an athlete that just got out of college says, oh yeah, I had that done as a baseline. That's very common. So then it's measured, their progression or deterioration is compared to that baseline. And so you repeat the testing and you put the athlete, you'll hear a lot about maybe a 5-step sequence where they've got to go through a walking activity, get on a bicycle at a submaximal level, and then recover. And do the symptoms still stay? Well, what are the symptoms? Headache, can't focus, just don't feel good, foggy memory, can't balance on one leg. And so you wait until those symptoms pass with low-level activity, then you go to high-level activity. Jake, some athletes can just click through those things on 24-hour segments, and they can be back really fast. Other athletes, they don't respond as well. And even to sit in a team room and study is really, really difficult. Now you're into severe injury. And so that's why at the high school and college level, we put a lot of academic restrictions on student athletes, because of it will actually make the concussion symptoms linger a little longer. Not that that's a free pass to get out of class, but these are serious situations. And so the concussion progression is truly unique to that individual.
Ralph, I appreciate the explanations and the time as always. Would love to have you back on, as inevitably, unfortunately, we see more injuries over the course of the season. But for now, enjoy the remaining fabulous weather outside, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon, all right?
Amen. Take care, Jake.
All right, Ralph Reiff joining us on the program. By the way, Eddie, do you know where you get rich blood, by the way?
Where?
Blood bank. Come on. Work with me a little bit there, right? Thank
So
you.
funny.
Fever in action tonight. Scott Agness going to join us, talk about that just under 10. Eddie, you got on your shirt. Fever going to do it tonight?
I hope, Jake. I hope they do.
It is a 7:30 start tonight. Eddie Garrison will have the pre- and post-game coverage for the Fever and the Atlanta Dream. I asked Eddie when I walked in, so what's the big difference between the Fever and what they were able to do in getting a split with Atlanta in the regular season and what they're going to have to do now? And he gave me an answer where I said to myself, that might have been the dumbest question I asked. And you said we're heavy and we got to scurry up Scott Agness, right? All right, we'll do that and be right back. Okay. So I hear that. I know that it means we're either going to be talking with Stephanie White or Scott Agness, right?
Do you not know what this song title is, Jake?
Is this Shake It Up?
Close.
Shake It Off?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking of the Cars. Sorry. I mean, come on. Do I get some credit there? I have, again, I go back to. I get it. I mean, when I went to the two shows over and saw Oasis, thought it was fabulous, and people were all just coming together having a good time. I get it. It's cool. I don't know if Scott Agness knew. Scott, did you know that you share a common Taylor Swift interest with Stephanie White?
It doesn't surprise me, but I know her country background, so that suits it well, given where Taylor Swift grew up in the country world initially.
Yeah, and let's be real. If you were to make a list of people that you have in common with a Taylor Swift, interest or appreciation, it would be a pretty long list, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's good odds of that one.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, let's get to it. Scott Agness, Fieldhouse Files, joining us on the program. Tonight it is a win or stay home, as I had mentioned, because if they win, they go back to Atlanta for Game 3. If Atlanta is able to win, the year is over for the Fever. And it would be disappointing to not advance, admittedly, but you have to say, when considering the injuries and everything this team has gone through this year, it has still been, pretty positive just to get to the playoffs. But let's focus on the now. This game tonight, Scott, tell me the things that Indiana did not do in Game 1 that surprised you that need to be corrected.
Yeah, I think the number one thing to me is just shooting. You can't go 2 of 15 from 3. And we knew coming into this season, we thought it was going to be one of the top 3-point shooting teams, and then obviously injuries negatively affected that. But no matter who's out there, you expect for them more than 2 players, that is, to knock down some of those shots. I thought, given the fact also that the Dream shot below 40% and were held to a couple bad quarters, and still the Fever weren't unable to take advantage of that. And then probably the third thing to me, Jake, is the fact that the Fever, despite their issues and concerns with the officials, not just that game, but all season long really, is they attempted more free throws and there were more fouls called against the Dream. But still, that really threw off the Fever's rhythm, I thought, especially in the fourth quarter. Boston with a foul, which was a bad one that I thought was legitimate, then Stephanie White technical, Odyssey Sims technical.
Scott, by the way, when I was talking about, and I asked Eddie, I said, so, the Fever and Atlanta split in the regular season. What did Indiana do in the regular season that has eluded them so far? And Eddie's immediate answer was, well, they had Caitlin Clark to begin with. Pretty big difference, right? When you look at their inability to shoot from the outside in Game 1 and going 2 for 15, sometimes, Scott, shooters just, there's a lid, and it's just not going down for them. Other times, though, you can look at it and say, Atlanta did something to take away open looks, or Indiana did not do something they normally do to get shooters open or in rhythm. Were either one of those things presented in Game 1?
Yeah, well, first I want to go back to their head-to-head meetings. This really speaks to poor scheduling on the WNBA. These two teams faced 2 of the first 3 games, and the season series of 4 games was over in the first 20 games. Before the midway point of the season, before Caitlin's injury, and before they lost 4 other players to season-ending injuries. So I think it was really a head-to-head matchup that you can't garner too much from. And for the Dream, they also just needed time with this iteration, this group. This is a team that, if not for what the Valkyries have done, I think you'd have Coach of the Year. They more than doubled their win total and have really had an impressive season. Now, in terms of the 3-point shooting for the Fever, I think, one, it's the obvious. It's personnel. You're dealing with a bench that didn't contribute much. It's a bench that's limited in what they were doing. They were out of the league and out of the country. So I recognize that, number one. And then defensively, they were really, this is the most physical team in the league to me, and it really is jarring for the Fever. It was all season long. And I think that physicality, number one, took them out of their spots, didn't allow them to easily cut through the lane or get to their open corners. And then foul trouble, I thought, with Aaliyah Boston was significant because the way they utilize her is more of a point guard and trying to set things up. And her having to go to the bench with 5 fouls first thing in the fourth quarter obviously negated and negatively impacted what they were able to do out there.
I thought when Indiana had the injuries they've had, Scott Agness, our guest from Fieldhouse Files, I thought the Fever perhaps would kind of reshuffle, if you will, their offensive sets to become an Aaliyah Boston epicentered team. And obviously Kelsey Mitchell, has had an outstanding season. And so Mitchell allowed them to continue to work on the perimeter. Do they incorporate the low post as much as they should?
I don't think so. I would agree with that. I'd like to see Aaliyah get more touches underneath, but they also have been playing her outside and along the perimeter more often. She had success there late in the game with backdoor cuts and such. I mean, we're talking about their starting center, Jake, and she led the team in assists. If that doesn't speak to the state of this group and also the evolution, I think, of Aaliyah's game in her third year, but I would like to see her get more touches, even if it doesn't result in an automatic shot, but play more of that inside-out game. I will, though, stress in this matchup that is a little bit more difficult because of the size. Bree Jones, Naz Hillman, Ryan Howard, even they're playing Brittany Griner played just 8 minutes off the bench, and that's another, probably Hall of Fame type big. And by the way, my fun note of the game is the last time the Fever had a home playoff game, Brittany Griner was in that one. She was playing for Phoenix at the time. Fever assistant coach Breon January was on the court, and Stephanie White, she was in year 2 coaching.
So it's been a while is what we're getting at, right?
It has. Quite a bit.
Scott, what would you say, though, about, I guess basketball and sports in general at times can be so mental. And we saw it in game 1. Perhaps there were times they did lose their cool. The technicals, you mentioned, even with some calls that kind of went their way. But overall, in being around this franchise, this group, from a coaching standpoint, a player standpoint, how would you explain the way that they navigated from a mental standpoint all that has gone into the attrition of this season?
Yeah, it's truly been remarkable, all the different things. Even early on with DeWanna Bonner, less than a month in, wanting out. Stephanie White dealing with a death in the family. She was away from the team for 2 games. Nothing about this season has been typical, and I think what they really did was rally around each other about a month into the season. They had a big road trip out west, and I feel like that was one of the changing points in this group. And now, Jake, it's one of the most tightly wound groups, and the chemistry and how they pour into each other is one of the most impressive things, especially when you factor in those individuals who haven't been around the team more than a month and how close they have seemingly got and gelled within the team. The challenge is it's limiting what you can do offensively and the play calls and the certain things. The thing they keep discussing is defensively, some players not being in the right spots and not communicating and such. But I think to your point, I think this season to me has gone far better than expected given the circumstances, because they won more games than last season, and that was not factoring in even the 4 more games that they added this season. And so the fact that Kelsey Mitchell's having the best season of her career, Aaliyah Boston's adapted, Lexi Hall has literally laid her body on the line. I don't think you can say enough about it, that even if the season does end tonight, while disappointing, I'm not sure what else you could have expected given these unprecedented injuries that they dealt with all season.
And with that, and I hate to put the cart before the horse here because, I don't think they lose tonight, actually. I think they go back to Atlanta. But for the sake of the discussion, the players that have come in as kind of emergency roster, fill-ins, and those that were lost, I mean, like a Sophie Cunningham, for example, and I am naive to this, so I apologize. Contractually speaking, this team will look similar or different next season. How?
I would guess somewhat different. Here's the challenge in all this, and I'm vague because there are so many issues league-wide that have not been resolved. We'll start with the new collective bargaining agreement. Then, Jake, you have 2 more teams added in. We don't know how expansion works. We don't know how many players you can protect. And then the other thing in all this, probably maybe the biggest factor, is the fact that all the players knew it was going to be a new collective bargaining agreement, heightened contracts that might be worth 2 or 3 times what they're getting paid. Therefore, I think there were only a couple players this offseason that signed multi-year deals. So I don't know what the percentage is, but it feels like, outside of rookies, players on their rookie scale contract, more than 90% of the league will be free agents. Now, I think there is a group of core players that you certainly hope will be back, starting with Kelsey Mitchell. Leah Boston will still be on the rookie deal. I don't foresee Alexi Hall or Sophie Cunningham necessarily going anywhere. But that bench, I think, could change quite a bit, both due to injuries, like a Sydney Colson, your third-string point guard, had ACL surgery in the middle of the season. What will she look like next season? Or do you need to bring someone that can, help immediately? So I would say the roster probably looks dramatically different just given the direction this league is headed. But there are way more question marks than answers at this juncture.
Scott Agness, our guest, Fieldhouse Files, where you can read his work, Fever and the Atlanta Dream tonight. Scott, let's switch to the Pacers side of things. Your thoughts on, and I have my own cynical thought here, but your thoughts first and foremost on Tyrese Halliburton's shoe.
Yeah, this is something all these players covet, right, is to have a signature shoe, and clearly Nike wasn't going to do it, and so he went to Puma, is able to do a lot more to it in terms of involvement and design, and we know Tyrese is big into fashion, and so this means probably even more to him. I do like how they're kind of doing a rollout locally. I think that's often missed, so I do like that. The design I'd like to see start out with maybe more Pacer colors or Iowa State color or something like that. I think his first one, by the way, was the Boomer or pinstripe looking shoe. I really like that one from a Pacer centric shoe as he dropped it.
I'm going to be not a cynic here, okay, but I'm genuinely curious of this. Did it hurt? It had to have. I mean, Puma had to have been like, oh, my goodness. And I do not think they are affiliated. I don't think they're related. I want to be very clear here. As a matter of fact, I love Pumas and Adidas are my shoes. Like, I'm Pumas and Adidas guys 99% of the time. But when you see the up-close personal film clips of the Halliburton injury, and he's wearing low-cut Puma shoes that are basically the same design of what now are his signature shoe, that has to be a marketing nightmare, right?
A little bit, although I take it the other way, too. Remember that Game 1 comeback where he makes the big shot? I think it was Game 1 down in OKC. After the game, at his press conference, he put his brand-new Halle ones, which are pink, I believe, on the court. So the promo, to me, wrote itself, ultimately.
Except for that people, you wonder if there are people that are going to say, oh, he wasn't wearing a high top, that's why he got hurt, etc. I know that that's ludicrous, but I'm saying, you know what I mean?
I do, and I totally understand that. I think they kind of got the best of both worlds. They got the high moment of a game winner wearing the shoes in its debut, and then obviously the Achilles injury and all this. I'm fascinated by this in general because we're seeing a lot more maybe third-party companies enter the fold with players and a lot more players wanting to do these brands, with New Balance getting back into the fold. And Anta's a big company overseas in particular. Now, most of these guys, I think the high levels have their own orthotics and such, but as we see maybe an uptick in injuries or a change in injuries, the first thing I often wonder about, to your point, is the shoe and the build, and have we got away from function for style? I don't know, but it feels like there is something there. I just don't have anything to back it up.
I like Aaron Nesmith's shoes. Aaron Nesmith wears blue and yellow New Balance. I think they're cool shoes.
Yeah. I haven't bought New Balance in a while, but everybody seems to be raving about them lately.
The Halliburton ones are cool, for sure. Now, how many different colors will they initially come out with?
Well, we already did the pink one, and so I think this is the second one that we know of. I would guess there's 4 or 5 in the first year, but I think a lot of that certainly depends on the demand, and him being out this season probably is the worst factor in all that because he won't be wearing them on the court, and there will be no visuals there from him in game.
And this is a dumb question. Do you know how much they'll be?
$140.
Look, that's a lot of money. And I know for a lot of people, I mean, that's a lot of money. But for a basketball shoe of an upper echelon NBA player, that's pretty much market value, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, 130. I should get it right. 130. Okay. The kid's shoe is 110. I think what we have seen, I forget who it was, maybe Shaq or like a Brandon Jennings wanted to make it. Maybe it was Damian Lillard most recently. I'm sorry, in Adidas, and I think he is not only having a shoe available at like $100, but he's going to wear that shoe. So it's a lesser shoe, but he's going to wear it on court and say, hey, look, if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for
Shaq
you. But
did that, you know what I mean? Shaq eventually did that. Marbury did it, and people kind of made fun of it, but I thought it was cool that Marbury did it. You know what I mean? Had his own line, the Starbury shoe. There was a time, Scott, the shoe thing to me is fascinating because, obviously Jordan was the epicenter of this. And I remember, when the Air Jordans came out, David Letterman had a fabulous line about that on Letterman, and when he was getting fined for it initially. But then every player started getting their own shoe, and then it got to the point where it went like too far the other way, where it seems to me, in other words, like we're back to the point where you have to be a star. Like, in other words, it is a compliment to Tyrese Halliburton that he has his own designed shoe, because, there was a time there where, like, Jordan Poole was getting a shoe, whatever. But they kind of scaled that back, did they not?
Oh, I think a little bit, but because you're seeing more shoe companies enter the NBA and get players to wear them, I think Puma is a perfect example. Like 5-7 years ago, I'm not sure anybody wore Puma.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
remember
I get
Puma
that.
in basketball.
I get that.
And so as part of that, what I'm getting at is you have more opportunities for players to get their own shoe, like LaMelo Ball, who hasn't really done much in the league, is marketable, but Puma's kind of leaned into that. But you're absolutely right.
You mean
Number
he doesn't
one,
wear big baller brand?
I think he later admitted that's part of the reason I think he had that injury.
That's hilarious. Not really, but it is. You know what I mean? Hey, Scott, before we let you go, Eddie points this out, but I wanted to give you a chance to expand on it. Pacers are back working out at Pascal Siakam's house, right?
Yeah, this is the second straight year that Pascal's hosted them down to Orlando, Florida. He's got an incredible gym down there. It's really his off-season home. And so it's a players-only minicamp where they can get in whatever work they want within each other for each other. Often, I think it was last year, maybe it was Tyrese or a player or two brought in a couple speakers. They have team dinners together. This is the formation of what this group does leading into training camp, which, Jake, believe it or not, 2 weeks from today,
unbelievable. Well, unbelievable. But you know what? And again, I keep going back to, like, you think like, oh man, I'm so excited. They were just in the finals. It is going to be a different team, but I think that there are areas that are going to be that I'm very intrigued by with it, including what Huff can do, and Wiseman, and there are still some big question marks for certain in some big areas of intrigue. Fieldhouse Files, where you can read about all of that, including tonight's game between the Fever and the Atlanta Dream. Scott Agness will have all of it. Scott, appreciate it as always.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jake.
All right, Scott Agness joining us on the show. Eddie, again, will have the pregame tonight for the Fever coming up. All right, when we come back, we got into it a little bit earlier, but that is, what exactly is the ceiling for Daniel Jones and his placement in Indianapolis, and where does that then place him within the league of what we talked about of quarterbacks in the NFL? Back into that conversation next. By the way, here is an odd Jake Query fun fact that no one but Jake Query cares about. I was a huge fan of the talent and as well the philanthropic personality of George Michael. George Michael, I read when he passed on Christmas Day some 6 years ago, something like that, that they believe that his net worth may have been reduced by upward of like 70% because in his later years, I say later, it's not like he lived to be 90, but in his more reclusive years, he spent a lot of time simply reading newspapers in England and reading of situations of people who were down and out or people who'd lost a home in a fire or whatever else. And he would anonymously find out where he could make donations and that kind of thing. And they think he might have given away upwards of like some $50 million or something to different things. And a massive, massive talent. Okay, speaking of massive talent, we did this earlier. But I was thinking about Daniel Jones. And I was thinking about Daniel Jones in terms of where exactly he could slot for the Colts if this continues what we're seeing. And I thought of this because last night I watched 4 games and I watched 4 quarterbacks. And I saw, obviously you have Justin Herbert, who was drafted inside the top 10 by the Chargers and is now paired with Jim Harbaugh, and it looks like, all the tools are there. And Baker Mayfield, who was drafted number 1 overall into a franchise that was kind of in disarray, and there was just, uncertainty and instability all around him. But now he has, in a vagabond fashion, landed in Tampa, and you knew late in that game when the Bucs got the ball and had to go the length of the field that Baker Mayfield is one of them that's like, we're going down and scoring, period. And you got to like him. And I like his moxie, and I think he's a good quarterback. But he had to kind of get out of Cleveland in order to be that, perhaps. Or maybe Cleveland gave up too early.
And he got out of Carolina as well.
Correct. I mean, he's been a couple places. He was in L.A. as well. But
I'll never forget that game, Jake. I don't know if you remember this. He's on the short week. I think it was Thursday Night Football. And he's with the Rams. And whomever their quarterback was, Stafford maybe, goes down. And they have to bring in Baker. And he's only been there for like 2 days. And he leads them to a game-winning drive.
Yeah, I mean, he has an it factor about him, right? Then you have C.J. Stroud, who we immediately said, this is the guy. And yet I'm not going to say he's regressed, but for a guy that is a ball placement specialist, to use his words, and certainly looked every bit of that early in his career, he started to miss some throws, and you wonder if maybe the voices aren't there a little bit, but I think still a nice player. And then Geno Smith, who, is kind of a journeyman, and, this is the last place we'll see if, the Raiders can keep afloat what he was able to do in Seattle. But in looking over those guys, and there's a lot that goes into this, and I was thinking about the fact that for the Colts, really since they've come from Baltimore, the Colts have had 3 franchise quarterbacks. And by that I mean guys that they unwrapped, they opened the gift box, they took it out of the shrink wrap, and it was ready to go. And it was Jeff George, Andrew Luck, and Peyton Manning. Those are the 3 guys that you could say Chris Chandler, but those are the 3 guys that everybody knew from the get-go, like they're going to build around these guys, and their roster is going to be built around these quarterbacks. Jeff George's case is unique because at that time, you still had the Bob Irsay influence, which led to instability. You had a ton of offensive coordinator changes. They sent away their best lineman and their best receiver to get Jeff George. It just never got any foundation or footing, and he then became kind of Baker Mayfield. He went elsewhere and really then was able to blossom and grow and lead the league in passing yards, etc. But Manning and Luck are guys that were unique because you took them number 1 overall, and in Manning's case, he'd been around the NFL his entire life, and I think he expected and understood everything that comes with being a franchise quarterback. Luck obviously was very cerebral and etc. And they've been looking for a quarterback since, and now you wonder if Daniel Jones, based on his age, is this a guy that, in fact, they're going to be able to build on, or is he a transitional guy? So I broke the NFL starting quarterbacks of today into 5 groups. And, Eddie, I'm going to read you these groups, and then once I do it, I want to go back over where you think Daniel Jones at his ceiling, at the best version of himself, could be if he's here beyond this 1-year contract.
Okay.
Group 1 are franchise quarterbacks. And the definition for this means guys that right now are in their prime or show that they are ready to be in their prime, and it is very clear that they make other players better, and it would be a challenge to almost not succeed with this guy as your quarterback. These guys are obvious. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, no particular order, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and then I've got 2 that are right on the tier of this, but I'm going to put them there anyway because I like them and I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt. Justin Herbert, and then the other one, and it might be too early, admittedly, but I'll put Jaden Daniels there because I think he's a special talent.
Mm-hmm.
Group 2, these are players that you absolutely can win with, but you got to kind of still make sure that you've got good players around them and just support them a little bit. Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, and again, Stafford I think at one time was in the franchise list, but he's older now. This is just where they are right now. Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield. That's my list in that grouping.
Okay.
Group 3. Group 3 is the dangerous group because these are guys that keep you stuck in a holding pattern. They're not terrible. You're going to be competitive week in and week out.
They put you in purgatory or that vat of suck that
yes,
we talk
the
about?
vat of suck. I actually have written right here. Holding pattern in vat of suck. Every year you are ceilinged at 11-6. Your floor is 7-9, but you're never drafting outside, in the top 15. They're perfectly sufficient, but now we know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
In this grouping, Tua, C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields, which might be a little high for him, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Kyler Murray.
Okay.
And then group 4. These are guys that when you're driving along on the interstate and you want to reach back and grab that bag of pretzels that you brought for the road trip and your buddy's riding shotgun and you're like, hey, can you grab the wheel real quick? I got to lean back real quick and find this bag of pretzels. I'm in the right lane. Just grab the wheel and make sure we don't drive off the road. These are guys that are simply holding the seat, holding onto the wheel until the next guy takes over.
Start because they have to.
Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Spencer Rattler. No one thinks they're the long-term answer at any of the places they are, and they probably in 2 years are going to be there. These are the guys, the easiest way to list this group, these are the guys who in 2 years, the jersey of where they're currently playing are available at a thrift store because you're like, I have no memory of that guy playing there.
AARP holders and Spencer Rattler?
Yes, that's exactly correct. And then the last group is your incomplete. Guys that look like they're going to get the opportunity to show whether or not they belong with their franchise. Drake May, Cam Ward, Michael Penix, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, the young group, right? Now, with that, at ceiling, the best version of Daniel Jones, you see being in which group?
I can see him being in that second tier where you have Jared Goff because I feel like there's a little bit more there with Daniel than there was Goff. Now, Goff is an elite passer and processor. I think Daniel Jones is showing that he can be an elite processor, and he's looking solid as a passer. But for me, I think the difference between those two would be that Daniel Jones gives you some mobility. And Daniel Jones doesn't have the same level of weaponry around him as Goff does.
Interesting to me about Goff, Jared Goff, who, and I've always said, you got to give Jared Goff credit for this. Here's a guy that grew up in California, played collegiately in California, Good-looking guy, swimsuit model girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Gets drafted by the L.A. Rams, living in L.A., Huntington Beach, girlfriend. Yeah, what are you going to do this weekend on your off day, Jared? Yeah, I think my girlfriend and I, who's a SI swimsuit model, are probably going to walk around Manhattan Beach, maybe go check out the pier. Okay. Life's good, right?
Yeah.
I might enter a Ryan Gosling lookalike contest. I don't know. I mean, just hang out. Okay. And then one day, it all changes. What are you going to do this weekend, Jared? Well, I'm not sure. I got traded. My girlfriend's doing a photo shoot down in Costa Rica. And, I guess I could go to the Ford Museum, or I might go past where Eminem lived. And he goes to Detroit, and give this guy credit, man. He went to a Lions team that was struggling, whatever else, and boom.
Yep.
I mean, he's playing well. As a matter of fact, his week 2, I tell the story all the time. I'm proud of this. But when I had my heart attack and I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure out just how much trouble I'm in, and I said before they were about to put the stent in to my cardiologist, look, put this in NFL terms. If I'm a quarterback right now, if my heart is a quarterback, what quarterback am I? Like, fourth quarter here, what quarterback am I dealing with? So when I had my cardiac stress test last week and he looked over everything, I said, well, what quarterback am I? And Mottman's a Lions fan. He grew up in Detroit. And he said, Jared Goff, but week 2. This was like last Wednesday. He goes, Jared Goff, but week 2, making the reference that what we saw in week 1 was not correct. Jared Goff, by the way, did you see what he did? Week 2?
Oh, yeah.
Nearly perfect quarterback rating and 5 touchdowns.
Can I offer some criticism, Jake, for your rankings and your tiers here?
Back to my rankings, yes. So I agree with you. I think Jones could be in that grouping of a guy you win with, but you got to make sure you have help around him. But they do right now. They have good offensive weapons for him. And then maybe if he comes down to earth a little bit, then in fact he is one of those guys that's just kind of a holding pattern guy.
So for me, overlooking this, I wrote it all down earlier. I like the Herbert and Hurts part of this. I feel like they're in their own tier where they're between the franchise and need help around them.
That's fair.
Because
That's
Herbert
fair.
hasn't won it yet in the playoffs. Hurts has won it in the playoffs, but I still, if you give him the ball with 40 seconds left and you need to go down and get a touchdown, I'm not confident in him being able to do that.
What's interesting is with Hurts, who's a very good player. I got a lot of love for Jalen Hurts. But what's interesting is with Hurts, because of the branding of the fact that Philadelphia had been there, you get the feeling that when Philly wins, that perhaps part of that is Jalen Hurts is benefiting from the roster around him. Whereas Herbert, when they fall short, you get the feeling that for Justin Herbert, they're falling short because of the roster around him. And it's not his fault.
Well, I mean, he threw 4 picks.
I know. He has struggled.
Houston
He has
last
struggled.
year, yeah.
But you do see, though, with Herbert, his size and his arm strength alone, you just go, yeah, I think this guy's got all the tools. And now paired with Harbaugh, I might be a little, like I said, Daniels and Herbert both, I may be accelerating putting them in Group 1.
I don't think you are with Daniels just because of what he did as a rookie, and I think the dude makes winning plays all the time, and he can will the Commanders to wins. 2 other ones, Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if he belongs in that other group with Bo Nix, Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, Dak, Love, and Baker. And then for me, I think it's so hard to evaluate C.J. Stroud in all this.
I would agree with that.
When Stroud had a healthy O-line in front of him and he had healthy playmakers around him, he looked great. But right now,
when he's got time to stand there, you're right. He gets the ball where it got. But
yeah.
I thought.
But last night, you look at that game, Jake, and you're like, okay, Nico Collins and who? Like,
true.
For Houston, who's he got?
It felt to me like he was hearing the footsteps in his head, though. Now, Lawrence, and admittedly with Lawrence, I'm biased. I still believe, I think Lawrence at this point may be too broken. And by that, I mean, I think some of the head injuries he's had, and I don't mean that so he's loopy. I think, again, he's another one. I think his happy feet probably now because of some of the abuse he's taken. But he's another. I mean, how much help does he really have around him?
I mean, they've given him Travis Hunter. They've given him Brian Thomas Jr.
I mean, correct right now.
He
But,
had
you know,
Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley.
But the line, I mean,
ETN,
he
his
was
college
running,
teammate.
Yeah, but he was
Ingram.
running for his life, and he's
Could be another one of those that needs a
injuries-
fresh start somewhere else to have success.
I mean,
Jake.
injuries he was so reliable in college from an injury standpoint, and then he just got battered. I mean, I keep going back to when he was a freshman in college and he absolutely eviscerated Alabama, and hearing Kirk Herbstreit say, this guy looks like a 10-year NFL veteran with his processing and his placement. Now, admittedly, he was thrown to guys that are all playing on Sundays. That helps. That absolutely helps. JMV, is he here today or is he out and about?
I believe he's here.
We will do the Love Heating and Air crossover. Hand it over to John, find out what he's got lined up, and we'll do it next. Every time I hear this song, I feel like I'm at the USA skating rink for the roller skating parties of 1980, like 1 or 2, whatever year this came out. Great song. Little Joan Jett. My sister was a huge fan of Joan Jett.
1981.
There you go. You know, I need to ask J&V this. I went down a rabbit hole on YouTube the other day.
Oh, goodness.
And I don't know how well, I take that back. I do know exactly.
That's a dangerous place to be.
It is. But you know how it is when once you click on a certain, a story, then it goes with the algorithm, right?
Yep.
And I was watching a news story from Indianapolis from the mid-'80s. And so then it took me through, on the right, it had all these like old school, like vintage Indiana things. And one of them was a clip of Damon Bailey playing in the 8th grade in Heltonville. And he was playing, it was 7th or 8th grade, and it was a home video, obviously. And it's hard to say because back in those days, in middle school, everybody's just wearing, the random like white jerseys or blue jerseys with 2 numbers on it. But there was a kid on the other team, kind of a doughy kid.
Doughy or insulated?
Gelatinous.
Oh.
Like a bigger kid. When I say bigger kid, I mean like he was tall, not heavy set by any stretch, but just, like hadn't filled out yet. And Bailey, what's that?
Prepubescent.
Yes. And Bailey was, Damon Bailey in the 8th grade, I mean, looked like he did when he was like a senior in high school. So that obviously helped and why he was such a good player. But as I was watching it, I'm like, you know what? I think J&V might be one of the guys on the floor. I think it might be that there was a guy on the floor that I'm like, that just looks like J&V. So I was genuinely curious because he grew up in the same area.
Okay, I got a concern here, Jake.
Okay.
I just got a text.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jake, awesome show today. Who the heck got my number and thinks I'm you?
Boy, that's a great question. That's a great question. I don't know. But you know what? Take any compliment you can get, Eddie.
I guess.
JMV has just arrived, by the way. It is the crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, 317-353-2141.
Fellas.
An official Heil Heating and Cooling dealer. I was just asking this, John. Yesterday I went down a rabbit hole of YouTube clips.
Yes.
And there was a YouTube clip that I stumbled upon that's basically just a home video of Damon Bailey playing in middle school.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
at Shawswick.
Yeah, well, Heltonville. And I
think
always
he went to
forget.
Shawswick too. Yeah,
Heltonville was the town he lived in, but
right.
Shawswick was the school,
yeah,
right?
the school. Yeah.
I could have sworn you were in the video. Now I don't know.
Was there like a fat kid that had a bowl haircut?
Yes.
That looked kind of like the miniature Chubby from Teen Wolf.
That's exactly.
Was I eating a Butterfinger while I was trying to block you out on a free throw?
Number 51. Did you ever play against Bailey?
He was a year behind me at the Bedford Boys Club. So we played.
But you did not play him in middle school, right? Your middle school team?
No. It had been a different. But guys, I knew the guys that played on those teams. That, for example, that '87 team,
Jay Ritter,
we were all on the same teams.
Rusty Garrison.
See, I was at the Bedford Boys Club, so I was with all those guys. Okay. We went to Marion and played Marion, and I had to guard Derek Keys.
Yeah, you said that went well, right?
Yeah, no, I think he dunked, if I remember correctly, on an 8-foot goal, and I cried.
By the way, when you were so let me ask you this: when you were that age, who was a better, very clear future standout, Derek Keys or Bailey?
I mean, you could always tell Bailey at the youngest of ages was going to be something. Derek Keys was pretty outstanding.
I know.
See, I didn't know of Jay or Lyndon at that time, and they were a grade above.
Right.
But I think both Persingers and Derek Keys were in this particular grade with me. And that's who I played against.
It was such a loaded era back then.
My goodness.
Man. I mean,
yeah, they were so good.
It's interesting, the 89 All-Star, like I was thinking about, Matt Painter at Delta at 89.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, you hardly heard – and, he averaged, 29 a game or something, 30 a game. But, I mean, you had Pat Graham, you had Greg Graham, you had Chris Lawson, you had – and Chaney nobody talked about, right? I mean, Leary was a great player coming out of high school. Barbie, Henry Williams. I mean, it was loaded, man.
Well, Marion was so loaded. Marion was loaded even before those guys got there. LaFon Bowens and that, what was his name? Was it Jay Teagle, the big guy? Something Teagle?
That would have been, mid-'80s, right?
I think 80, where'd they go?
Right after Blackman.
They went 85, 86, and 87.
Correct.
That was the triple purple rain.
Blackman came out in 83.
Yeah.
I mean, loaded.
Oh, man. It was good. Good stuff.
Fun time, for sure.
That and Anderson and Muncie and all of it was loaded.
I mean, think about just going to the Wigwam and seeing Madison Heights and Anderson and Highland, I mean, in the early to mid-'80s.
Link Darner was Madison Heights, right, back then, I think?
Correct. Now, was he Madison Heights or Highland? He might have been he was Madison Heights.
I thought he was Madison Heights. Yeah. But that was a hell of an era, right? I do the same thing, though. I watched.
It's the best.
I know we got to run here. I was watching Vince Sims and somebody when Courtney Whitty was playing in a championship game.
I just saw that.
Yeah, I was watching that the other day, too.
Algorithm the other day. In 1980, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. John's up next. You got a big show lined up?
We do. We're going to talk IU, Illinois. We'll talk more Colts and a little high school mixed in, too.
All right. J&V's up next. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow, and I thank you for listening to Query & Company.